Welcome to Marketing MASH, brought to you by themarketingscope.com.
Hi, this is Eric Vidal with The Marketing Scope, and today we're doing the Marketing MASH video series. With me is RC Dirkes of R.C.Clement.Creative.
R.Clement.Creative.
R.Clement.Creative, excuse me.
It's a whole branding thing.
Yeah.
It's all about brand parallelism, which is one of the things we're going to talk about.
And hopefully I'll remember it better now. It is memorable. R.Clement.Creative, especially for a PR and communications firm.
Yes.
First of all.
Yeah. The use of RCD and RCC, it matches up with my actual initials. It matches up with my professional image. All these things. But I deliberately use the term creative because when you hear creative in the marketing industry, you tend to think of advertising people. Mm-hmm. Well, I use tried and true advertising principles in my PR strategies. So I'm deliberately trying to create something that flips over a model that everybody thinks they know. I'm trying to get their thinking to be inside out.
Nice. Well, that fits perfectly with our message today, and it's brand architecture or branding from the inside out, right? And so what we're going to try to leave you with today is some tips and some best practices on creating that brand architecture or that brand promise, that messaging guide, that one-page sheet that you and the marketing group and the whole company uses, right? What's our mission, our vision? Mm-hmm. If you had one paragraph to say about who we are, what is it? If you had 2 lines or even 1 line,
right.
Which is that's hard, and that takes a lot of time and a lot of dedication, but also the brand promise. What are we going to promise our audience? And I think it's interesting because the way you're saying, we're looking at it from the inside out. Mm-hmm. A lot of marketers, they're looking at it from the outside in, or they want to start with what vehicles are we going to get this message out first, as opposed to let's talk about the who we are first.
Right.
Or decide that.
I've been in marketing communications, corporate communications, and in PR agency world for 25 years. In the preponderance of my experience, a company will start off by saying, we need a brochure.
Yeah.
Or we need a website.
Yeah.
Or we need a podcast. And then they'll start thinking later about what to say and those things. So I put it in journalistic terms because I'm trained as a journalist. We always thought about answering the who, what, why, where, when. What I found was most marketing organizations were answering where first.
Yeah, where.
They were saying, where are we going to put it? What package are we going to put it in? But where is it going? To whom is it going? When they should be thinking about who are we?
Yeah.
You need to know who you are and what your genuine brand is before you can appeal to an audience.
And let's stay there for a minute. So the who are we, and not like I want to be 6'7" and play in the NBA, mm-hmm. but I have to go with what is given to me or what I'm good at. And that's just not going to happen. So you notice that a lot of companies, they're, well, no, we want to do this, want to be this, but it's not in line with their core principles, their brand promise. It's not in line with what they have and what they do already, and it's too much of a stretch sometimes. Do you know what I mean?
Yes. Too often they start off, if they do start with the who question, they'll start off with who do we want to be?
Yeah.
Who do we need to be? Because the orientation is always to think of the outside first.
Yeah.
But you can't win in marketing or business by being something that you are not.
Yeah.
It's something that I learned in a very physical way when I played football in college. I was not a big, tall defensive lineman, but I was a successful defensive lineman because I realized that I was fast and strong. If I tried to play like a tall, big defensive lineman, I would have failed. So I had to think about who am I before I thought about where the play is going to go.
Yeah.
And I was fortunate that my coaches thought the same way.
Yeah.
When they designed a play, they would think about who I was before where they would put me.
Yeah.
And I've seen that thinking work very successfully in marketing.
And that's a great example. And that's football. Football and marketing have there's a lot of parallels, but so
they're both brutal.
Yeah, they are. They're both brutal. There's a lot of X's and O's too, and there's a lot of marketing armchair quarterbacks too. But
that's correct. Everybody believes they know.
Everyone's a marketing expert. Let me go back a little bit. So in my past lives, since the late '90s, even every time I would go into an organization, especially with startups, it was trying to figure this out. This is one of the first things on the top of the list, and going to the CEO and some of the other executives and figuring out, what are we, who are we, and what, the about us, some of the high level message. It's a messaging guide, is what we used to call it. Different organizations and different agencies call it something different, but another one is brand architecture. But I remember recently coming into a company and we didn't do it. It goes back to, we have to do this webinar, we have to do some lead gen first, and let's circle back with that. And I'm no longer with the organization, obviously, and then they still haven't addressed it. But they've been around a few years. But it's never too late. When I worked for WebEx, we were a public company, but we still addressed it. And we sat down, there were 6 of us in a room, we put it together. It was not a quick 1-hour meeting, but it took a lot of time, and there was a lot of collaboration with other groups. And in order for our brand promise to be true and real, we actually went and our brand promise was to make business easy, right? So online meetings, web conferencing, online support or tech support helped your company make business easy. But one of the things we found out during this exercise was that wasn't the perception with our customers. Yes, when they used our product, they felt that way. But when they dealt with us, they didn't really feel that way. And what I mean by that is, with finance, our billing, a lot like a telephone company or a mobile phone company, was very complicated. Our customer service sometimes wasn't that easy to work with. And some of the sales process wasn't that easy to work with. And the pricing was very complicated. So before we're going to say all that, get the vehicles and go say it, we have to fix this and make sure it's that experience is like we have to talk the talk. And so we had to go to the different groups and make sure that we made business easy, right, before we say it. Because you can't just say it and expect people to believe it. It can't be just a marketing and sales message and have your sales and marketing people touting this message all the time. It has to be real.
Yes, because it's been said before.
Yeah.
And in the age of mobile communication, where you're literally holding this rapid flow of information in the palm of your hand, it's not only been said before, it's been said over and over and over again. So if you don't match up that genuine brand to that message, it will be ignored.
Yeah.
We could do some Google research if we wanted to and sat down and tapped in some things. We could find all kinds of examples that would prove what we just said.
Yeah.
We'd be able to prove that very, very quickly. So it does not work if you are not who you say you are. I worked at a technology PR firm, and every time we were the un-agency. We tried to behave differently. We were not a big agency. We were not filled with what we would call now millennials. It was all people who were 40 years older, and we didn't try to be a mid-size or a big agency. Our practices were not designed that way. We didn't sell ourselves that way. We sold ourselves as who we are, and it worked very well. The agency was eventually acquired, and we were very successful. But we never got bigger than about a dozen people, and we never went away from what it was we actually did.
Yeah.
Did you know?
Do you know what the brand promise is for retail company Target? So I do. It's been their brand promise for quite some time. It's Democratize Design. And so what they do is they go out to these different manufacturers or designers, whether it be products, clothes, houseware items, or what have you, and they take those high-end nice designs and they make it available for the masses, right, for a good price. And so that's been their brand promise for I don't know how many years, at least 20. It's been a long time.
I don't know. I know that I didn't know that in words, but I can tell you that I knew it in terms of brand
And from experience.
When we were talking about sports earlier, my son is an aspiring football player and a baseball player, and he needed royal blue, Under Armour style gear to go underneath. Well, I didn't want to pay the highest price for that sort of thing. I needed long sleeve, short sleeve, and no sleeve for all the different seasons that baseball covers.
Sure.
I went to Target.
Yeah.
Because I knew I would have the right design.
Yeah.
And I knew it would be at a reasonable price.
Yeah.
So they're whatever they are doing in their communication, it reached me.
Yeah, and they don't say that in their messaging, but they provide that experience, and you get that experience. So you got that experience. You knew you can get that one way or another. I mean, here's another one. Did you know, or do you know, Google's brand promise? And this was from early on, way before they went public. But it's a funny one. It's short and concise. Both of these are very short, right? It's not this one big long paragraph like, oh, we're this, and we're also this, and don't forget this, and this, and this, and this. But it's just, don't be evil. And their vision was to get all the information, the world's information out there to you. And that's a big vision. That's grandiose. And that's, you could argue it's not attainable, but it's a grand vision. But the brand promise was, don't be evil. And you can argue now that some of the things they've done, like the deal they did in China a few years ago, where they edit some of the content. Like if you're in China, you look up Tiananmen Square, some beautiful pictures come up, and nothing about the history that went on in the late 80s there in 89 or what have you. But that's a brand promise that they stuck to for quite a few years, and you can argue that they're still trying to do that now.
Yeah, I'm familiar with the example that you brought up, and I don't remember, again, it's just like with Target, I don't remember exactly how I heard this or where I saw it, but I know that I saw it. I saw someone interviewed about it from Google, and they said, well, we decided that it's consistent with our message. We could stand to a certain principle and not be in China at all, which isn't really practical or realistic, or we could go with an adjustment and still try to live to that message within the parameters they gave us. So we felt that, they said we felt that we'd rather be in that market.
But at least they consciously thought of that, right?
Yes.
Because that's key to their message, key to who they are, right? Not 6'7" NBA basketball player, but it's who they are.
It's who they are. They knew they could only do certain things, and they chose to do those things instead of take a pass.
So let's give. Closing up, let's give a couple tips that we can give. Any tips that we can give the folks here to get started on creating that brand architecture or that messaging guide, that thing that can help them in their marketing and their organization as a whole.
The tips that I would give is first to have a philosophy, to have a way of thinking, and the way of thinking that we've been advocating is inside out. Think of who you are first before you think of where you are going to deliver the message. To help people build messages, I try to use a very simple thing derived off of my journalism experience. Always answer the questions why, what, and how, in that order in your messaging. It goes to a certain structure of writing. If you can't answer why in a couple of sentences that you can say clearly over in a conversation like this, you're going to have trouble. So you need to be able to design that. Designing a statement like that, there are ways to approach it, and I think you ask yourself, why does the market need to hear what we have to say? Then you can ask, what value do our services and products provide? Then you can get to the how. How do we do it for them?
Yeah.
And I really believe you have to go in that order. You flip the thinking over. Too often we start, as you started off talking about, too often organizations start with how.
Yeah.
How are we going to write this brochure? How are we going to distribute it? Now start off inside out.
Yeah.
Say, why are we doing this?
Yeah.
What value do we provide? And how will we do it for this audience? And then you can get into the specifics.
Yeah, no, I agree with you. And to add my tips to that, I would take what you said and I would try to create it on a one-page document if you can.
Yes.
Maybe 1.5, but try for just less is more, half a page if you can, 1 page. And put, the About Us paragraph. Put the vision or mission if you can. Put the brand promise. That should be key. That should be on there.
Yes.
What's that brand promise? And if you can, even about the company, you have the one paragraph, like a boilerplate you'd have on the press release. But also, if you can have it in 2 lines or even get 1, that's hard to do. But if you can, and work. And the other one is work with other people. Have it be a team effort, not just 1 or 2 persons in a corner in a vacuum working on it. Maybe to start the first draft, but then work with some people in engineering, if you have engineering, or product development, or the customer services people, like we did at WebEx. Go to the finance people.
That's part of inside out thinking. Think about your organization and who needs to be involved.
The CEO also needs to be involved, whether they want to or not. The CEO has to be involved in the process. Thank you, Bob. I appreciate that.
Thank you, Eric, for the time.
And to follow Bob on Twitter, go to @RC Dirkes. And for the Marketing Scope, it's @Marketing Scope. Thank you very much.
That's it for this episode of Marketing Mash. You can share your thoughts by following us on Twitter and Facebook. Subscribe to our podcast to keep up with the show. And of course, you can always find us by visiting themarketingscope.com.